The son of a poor blacksmith once chased a dream. He wanted to dedicate his life to cars, but instead, he was entrusted with a motor repair shop cleaning up. In a few decades, he would put Japan on wheels, and soon, the whole world. This is the story of the creator of Honda, another proof that the obsession with a dream and faith in yourself will certainly lead to success. Soichiro Honda was born in a poor village blacksmith family on November 17 in 1906 in Japan. His mother was a weaver, and all her life she worked at a loom for weaving especially complex patterns. And his father was mainly engaged in repairing bicycles. In those years, bicycles became extremely popular, not only in villages but also in big cities. Gihei Honda used to buy broken bicycles at bargain prices in Tokyo and fix and sell them at higher prices. Soichiro was helping his father literally from the cradle, and bicycle parts were his favorite toys. Here's when Soichiro's spirit of adventure and determination was born. Honda saw the first car in his village for the first time when he was a toddler. It made an indelible impression on him. Even many years later, recalling this episode, he still remembers that hum of engine and how he ran as fast as he could after the car. Of course, he didn't catch up with it, but returned to smell the black puddle left by the car, and the smell of engine oil was better than perfume to him. Since then, Soichiro has become obsessed with a passion for technology. Once, he stole a bicycle from his father's workshop to have a look at the plane piloted by the art Smith. Of course, he was not allowed to enter the airfield without his parents, but Soichiro climbed up a tree and managed to observe his flight from there. His father, having learned about how long the little Soichiro had traveled for this event, was surprised and didn't even scold his son for taking his bicycle without asking. Soichiro soon learned how to sharpen the blades of agricultural machinery and began to make toys himself. His love for technology and invention grew stronger every day. Soichiro was an excellent student, but he didn't want to disappoint his parents. When school reports were given to children, he knew that his parents had to certify his report with a family seal. But his report was so bad, he decided to cheat. He cut out family hieroglyphs and an old rubber tire and signed the assessment report himself. The only thing that Soichiro didn't take into account was that the hieroglyphs of the surnames were not symmetrical, and the print for printing on paper should be mirrored. Yet, he started making fake seals for other classmates as well. It all continued for a while until his teacher noticed the trick. Soichiro's father left him without lunch and made him stay facing a corner of the room for the whole day, but admitted that he didn't do it because of a trick, but because Soichiro wasn't accurate enough and was caught by his teacher. That's what his father was like. The Soichiro family wasn't rich. Gihei Honda didn't have money for his son's university education, and all he could give to children was an understanding of the importance of hard work and a love for inventions. So, at the age of 16, having finished 8 grades, Honda went to buy a newspaper with job listings. The assistant position at the Arshukai auto repair shop in Tokyo was the most attractive. Soichiro didn't hesitate to go straight to the capital of Japan, where he was hired, but as the youngest employee, he was initially assigned to clean the workshop and cook meals. He was very attentive to his duties and quickly earned his team's trust. So soon, the shop's owner allowed Soichiro to help him in the workshop. Honda was a bright guy. He was becoming much better at mechanics every day. In 1923, a terrible counter-earthquake hit Japan. As a result of the tragedy, more than 140,000 people died. There's a legend that Soichiro showed unprecedented courage and saved 3 cars from the car repair shop fire. In gratitude, the owner promoted the 17-year-old hero to an auto mechanic. Yet, according to another version, not all mechanics survived the earthquake, so the car service faced a shortage of personnel, and Honda was just lucky to stay alive. He then assisted in the assembly of the famous aircraft-powered Curtiss machine based on the American Mitchell chassis. While working on this monster, Soichiro got to know the most important principles of mechanics, which subsequently came in handy more than once in his life. A year later, at the 5th Japanese Automobile Racing Championship, Shinichi Sakibabara entered the chairman's trophy for the first time, and the young man riding alongside him as a mechanic was Soichiro Honda. Their team won the race. Honda at that time was only 18 years old, This victory divided Honda's life into before and after. From then on, all his thoughts, developments, and inventions would revolve exclusively around cars. 4 years after that first race, Yuzo Sekikibara expanded his business by opening several branches in the province. One of them was led by 21-year-old Soichiro Honda. Art Tokai was a very prosperous business and generated significant income, but that wasn't enough for Honda. After that memorable earthquake in Tokyo, he decided to create much more durable parts and suggested replacing the wooden wheel spokes in the rims with metal ones. Having invested almost all his savings in research laboratory, he also tried to produce piston rings, but none of the directors of Art Tokai supported his ideas. So Honda worked at Art Tokai for a total of 6 years, after which at the age of 22, he decided to go back home and open his own car repair shop. In the first year, Soichiro patented metal spoked rims and invented Japan's first car lift. Although Soichiro almost lived in the workshop, developing piston rings day and night, the results of his work were not good enough. Honda had to admit his incompetence in the foundry business and change his attitude towards education because he used to consider education a waste of time. He went to the Hamamatsu College of Technology, studying mechanics and engineering, but didn't have money to finish his studies. So yeah, Honda didn't have a degree after all, although he devoted all his free time to self-education studying the structures and mechanisms of racing cars. By developing his method of engine cooling and overheating protection, he solved the main problem of all sports cars of that time. So Soichiro decided to take part in magic competitions himself to test his masterpiece. At the same time, he met Saki Yosobe, a brave girl who was engaged in athletics and archery, and she also worked as a school teacher. Right now, it's safe to say that it was a love for life. They soon got married. Saki helped her husband in everything in the workshop and worked both as a cook for employees and as an accountant, since Soichiro himself was pretty bad at this. Life was in full swing, and in the mid-30s, Honda, together with his car service team, developed a new racing car based on the Ford model. In 1936, Soichiro decided to race at Tamagawa Speedway in the suburbs of Tokyo and nearly died. And this is how it was. Soichiro himself was driving the car, and he took his younger brother with him as a mechanic. Everything was fine until at the very finish line, when their car was going at the breakneck speed, about 75 miles per hour. In front of them, the car of another participant suddenly stopped. Soichiro hit the brakes, but couldn't avoid the collision. His car rolled over 3 times in the air. Soichiro flew out of the car, having received multiple fractures of his left arm, dislocated his shoulder, and seriously injured his left eye and face. And his brother, who was sitting next to him, broke his spine and miraculously stayed alive. 2 brothers spent 3 months in a hospital. Soichiro already knew that he would never drive a car in any competition, so he decided to concentrate on the production of tuning and spare parts for racing teams. Yet, while he was in the hospital, he learned that out of 30,000 piston rings he had made in recent years and submitted to Toyota for review, only 50 were accepted for review, and only 3 of them passed quality control tests. Any other man might have given up after such news, but not Honda. Barely getting stronger after leaving the hospital, he again got down to business, and the technology for the production of reliable piston rings was finally found by him. Then he decided to found the company, Tokai Seiki, and start piston rings mass production. Soichiro again sent his rings to Koichiro Toyota himself. This time, his rings were so good that Soichiro became the main supplier of piston rings to Toyota. Things went uphill. During the Sino-Japanese War and then World War II, Soichiro supplied Toyota and many other companies with his piston rings. The business expanded rapidly, but this success was interrupted in 1944 when Hamamatsu was heavily bombed by American aircraft and the Tokai Seiki factory in Yamashita was destroyed. A year later, the factory in Yamada was also destroyed because of the Mikawa earthquake. Honda decided not to restore the factories and sold what was left of Tokai Seiki to Toyota for 400,000 yen. After Japan was defeated in World War II, Soichiro decided that since the country was entering a period of poverty and ruin, it's time to take a break. Rumor has it, he even bought a cistern of medical alcohol, installed it in his yard, and he publicly announced that he was going to take a year off. After that, he did spend a year arranging home parties and treating friends with homemade whiskey. One day, one of his friends brought with him a generator engine designed for radio receiver number 6 of the former Imperial Army. When Honda saw this engine, he was immediately inspired by the idea. What if We retrofit bicycles with generator engine. It was a fateful moment, and the idea that came to his mind determined the direction of his future company. Soichiro installed a generator motor from that very tiny army radio on a bicycle, attached a rubber heating pad as a fuel tank, and just like this, he invented a moped. In 1946, Honda used money from his company's sales and built a small barrack-lined building in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere and called it Honda Technical Research Institute. So, having hired a dozen employees, Soichiro engaged in development of technology and the production of mopeds. He made more than a dozen of these mopeds for his friends, after which he decided to mass produce them. The news of Honda's inventions spread throughout Japan, with buyers coming to Hamamatsu from all over the country. About 1,500 mopeds, nicknamed Choo-Choo for their sound, were sold in the first year. Honda then replaced bought from another company engine with a two-stroke engine of his design. When the sample was ready, Soichiro brought it to his wife and asked her to try it out. So it was Saki who became the first female tester of the Honda Type A prototype, based on which subsequent models were created. The Type A motorized bikes were successful in sales until 1951. Many manufacturing companies struggled in the early years after the war because of limited resources and unstable economy. Soichiro knew that he needs to be 2 steps ahead, so he started to design his own engines and needed parts to make not only mopeds but motorcycles. In 1948, when Soichiro Honda was 42 years old, he renamed the Honda Technology Research Institute to Honda Motor Company Limited. He also offered Takeo Fujisawa to work together and become co-founder of the Honda Motor Company because Takeo was well known for his diplomacy. He used to be a traveling salesman, always telling his clients the truth. At that time, Honda Motor Company had only 34 employees and one big dream for all of them. The first motorcycle that was completely designed and developed by Honda from scratch was called the Dream D-Type. It was released in 1949, but Honda needed to gain attention for an Asian product to enter the global auto and motorcycle market in the 50s. Soichiro decided on a way to win over customers. All he had to do is to win races in the popular Isle of Man tourist trophy competition. It was a legendary motorcycle race that was considered to be the most dangerous in the world because the average speed exceeded 125 miles per hour and over 250 deaths occurred in the history of the Isle of Man. And this is an average of 2 to 3 people per competition. A big racing fan, Soichiro was genuinely convinced that this race was the right place for his business to gain brand awareness. Yet, he needed to know his competitors and make his motorcycle way better. So, in 1954, Soichiro traveled to Europe to buy his competitors' models, which his team would have to disassemble and find out their secrets. In 1955, Honda was already the largest motorcycle brand in Japan, and 3 years later became the main Japanese motorcycle manufacturer, leaving behind not only 50 Japanese competitors but also about 200 manufacturers from other countries. But still, a poor post-war market in Europe and Japan couldn't afford a large motorcycle, so Honda had to come up with something practical and small. Takeo Fujisawa turned to engineers and said, if a motorcycle was small and so easy to drive that it could be driven with one hand while holding a noodle tray in the other, then every noodle peddler in the country would buy one for himself. In the same year, Honda engineers launched the Honda Supercat with a 4-stroke engine. It was light, very easy to ride, and affordable. The Supercat is still one of the most popular motorcycles in the world today. The number of units sold exceeded 100 million. Making it the most popular motorcycle in history. So not surprisingly, Honda had become the leading motorcycle manufacturer in the world by 1959 with this model and was ready for the Isle of Man race. In the same year, 4 pilots participated in the race to ride Honda motorcycles. All 4 riders finished the race on their own without any technical problems, and this spoke of the quality and reliability of the manufacturer. Potential distributors liked the result of the race, and in the same year, Honda entered the US market for the first time. As president of the Honda Motor Company, Soichiro Honda turned his brainchild into a billion-dollar multinational company now. During that time, motorcycles had a bad reputation in the American community because of criminals in black bomber jackets, and most people simply avoided them. But Soichiro's engineering skills and Fujisawa's marketing skills have resulted in Honda motorcycles outselling Triumph and Harley-Davidson. How did they do it? Well, Honda launched a legendary advertising campaign showing couples in love, housewives with bags full of groceries, and ordinary working men joyfully rolling about their business on Honda motorcycles, and new beautiful dealerships, which, unlike the gloomy salons of competitors, were clean and bright, with polite staff meeting customers. In the 1960s, the rapidly growing company Soichiro required completely new approaches to management. The control principles he introduced to Honda were quite revolutionary. The divisions were demarcated. One was responsible for research and development, the other for production. Soichiro himself was always opposed to a hierarchical form of management, believing that, in general, people work harder and innovate better if they're not forced. The Honda system was designed by him to nurture the geniuses who would sooner or later replace him as president. By the way, the fact that Soichiro was not going to transfer the business to blood heirs played a very important role in obtaining long-term bank loans for the company. Honda never allowed his relatives to lead, believing that no matter how outstanding the founder of the company, there is no guarantee that his son will be capable of the same. The leadership of the company should be left to a person with the distinctive qualities of a leader. In 1961, the company was already producing 100,000 motorcycles a month. While continuing to race, in the same year, the Honda team took the first 5 places in the race, setting an absolute record. It was a real triumph for Soichiro Honda. After a dizzying victory, he decided it was time to get into cars, and just a year later, Honda released not some boring sedan, but the S500 Roadster. In 1963, when Honda was already 57 years old, the ground for the company's entry into the all-wheel drive market was prepared. At the same time, he announced that the Honda motor would take part in Formula One racing, which was quite a bold move. However, he had confidence in his engineering team. So Honda joined Formula One racing in '64 and won the Mexican Grand Prix the following year. Honda's motorcycle business also didn't slow down, and after 4 years, the company was already producing 1 million motorcycles a month. In the early 70s, when the oil crisis broke out in Japan and all automakers agreed to cut production and raise prices, Soichiro rebelled and refused to participate in this conspiracy. He decided to do the opposite, doubled production and lowered prices. And he was right. Japanese Nissan and Toyota sales fell 40%, while Honda sales rose 76%. In 1973, Honda Motor Company celebrated its 25th anniversary. Soichiro Honda and Takeo Fujisawa announced that they were going to step down and take up advisory positions on the board of directors. But Honda himself was full of energy to stay idle. He was appointed Supreme Advisor, and his status was such that People magazine included him in their list of 25 most intriguing people of the year, calling him Japan's Henry Ford. Also in retirement, Soichiro was elected Vice President of the Tokyo Chamber of Commerce and the Japan Automobile Industry Association, founded the International Traffic and Safety Association, ran his foundation, developed environmentally friendly technologies, and lectures at international conferences. In general, he had no less eventful life than in his youth. Honda Company began not only selling but also manufacturing motorcycles in the United States in 1979, and 3 years later became the first Japanese brand to produce cars. Honda was the third largest car manufacturer in its native Japan in the early 80s. Soichiro and his wife Saki held private pilot licenses at 77 years old. Soichiro also enjoyed skiing, golf, hang gliding, and hot air ballooning. An old dream of the sky ever since he was a boy watching an air show while sitting on a tree haunted him. So, in 1986, Honda was 80 years old and he entered the aircraft industry to research and develop jet engines. Legendary inventor and businessman Soichiro Honda died of liver failure on August 5th in 1991. He was 84 years old. For services to the state, Soichiro Honda was posthumously awarded Japan's highest award, the Imperial Order of the Rising Sun. Honda had achieved a large number of achievements, including 470 inventions and 150 patents, and in search of solutions to complex engineering problems, he had always followed the purest path. Perhaps the secret was that he was targeting a middle-class consumer that many manufacturers ignored, but the main strength of his entrepreneurial genius lay not so much in bold technical solutions and design beauty, but rather in the market intuition that he possessed by nature. The founder of the company, with over 5 million vehicles sold annually and $130 billion in annual revenue, once said, "Many people dream of success. I believe that success can only be achieved through repeated failure and introspection. Success is only 1% of your work, and the rest is the courageous overcoming of obstacles. If you are not afraid of them, success will come to you. Keep up learning, guys. Success is just the number of attempts.